Hey guys, this is Anthony Fritchley, known as Anthony Fritchley for 2003 on my YouTube channel here, and I have some sad news for all the PBS kids and PBS fans out there if you're watching this. Well, guys, I have some sad news to tell you. That it's about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and stuff like that, you guys. I did find out on the news, we probably already know that. Mostly we probably noticed, but which that means I have some terrible news. You probably might notice before, but if you don't know what had happened, well, sadly, I have some terrible news. I'm afraid that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting will shut down. Yes, this is not a joke, you guys. It's not fake, you guys. It's real. Just like it's kind of shut down Universal Kids, PBS Kids Sprout, and Cubo. But this time, it'll shut down the Corporation for Public Broadcasting this time. Yeah, I'm afraid the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, you guys, is going to shut down. Sadly, I couldn't show you a picture on Corporation for Public Broadcasting because I don't have any pictures with me. Because I am not on YouTube or online or watching TV or I'm not even at home, because it's a good thing I could still watch PBS or PBS Kids anytime on TV. It's a good thing I have local PBS station. I'll tell you what locals channel I was watching. It's called WITF Harrisburg. So yeah, I remember the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I remember from funding was part of my childhood. I don't know what it means but I think the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Yeah, I'm afraid the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is starting to shut down, this time for good. And there has to be a reason. It feels like I have to say that for no reason at all. Just like Brandon Pipp and Ryan Goodwin just for cutting me. Just for me liking Dan Sobel. But yeah, even though I hate Dan Sobel, but I'm not talking about Dan Sobel, Man of Culture. I'm talking about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Yeah, I'm afraid the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is starting to close down, you guys. I remember the TV shows I remember from my childhood. That is the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I remember Arthur was on. I remember Sesame Street, and you probably know a lot of PBS Kids shows and histories. I remember I don't think the Teletubbies and Boobas were never been on Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I only did the Viewers Like You part. Well, Booba only used the Viewers Like You. They didn't do funded by on Booba. They did, which I kind of do miss Booba. I remember Booba no longer aired. I remember the other old PBS Kids shows no longer aired. I think Barney used to do the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I don't think they do that on hit entertainment shows. I know Arthur was funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So was Wildcrats and the other PBS Kids shows, and including the PBS shows. They do that on PBS and PBS Kids. I think my favorite PBS stuff were PBS Kids. I'm not really into just PBS shows. I know that if it's just, I know not all TV shows or movies were made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And no, it didn't. Yeah, I think Sesame Street was the oldest. We probably know Sesame Street was been on a very long time on PBS from almost 56 years now. I'm afraid the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I think originally came out from NET, because NET was before PBS. It's called National Educational Television. I knew NET since I was watching YouTube. I didn't know. I thought NET was something else, but NET was originally before PBS. So yeah. So they replaced with PBS instead. PBS is another word. The whole thing is called the Public Broadcasting Service. Yeah, PBS stands for Public Broadcasting Service. But CPB is actually called the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Yeah, I'm afraid the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is gonna close down. I remember Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I remember they did that on the old shows that no longer aired. They did it on Between the Lions. I don't know what else. I can't. I think so, and also what else that PBS Kids that I know that used to air but not anymore. I don't. I think I know. I think Pig plus Cat and the. No, I don't think. I don't think the Cat in the Hat knows a lot about that. Has a Corporation for Public Broadcasting, so it's never been made by a corporation for public broadcasting. They only did the viewers like you part, but they did some other stuff. But yeah, crowd sponsor. I didn't say that the U.S. Department of Education was closed down. I don't. Teletubbies and Boobah were never been made by a corporation for public broadcasting. Well, for Boobah, they only did. Well. I remember my favorite shows on PBS Kids when I was a kid. I don't think Kai was made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but I do know that. Well, some Mr. Rogers funding does say the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That mostly, like, most recently. And some, like, the later seasons of Sid the Science Kid was made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Well, originally on the first funding, it was never made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So, yeah. I'm afraid the reasons why they're going to shut down the Corporation for Public Broadcasting that I know of, it has to do with Donald Trump. Even though I am kind of neutral to Donald Trump, I didn't want to hate. Probably will never hate Donald Trump. Just like I don't want to hate. Well, I did used to not. I used to not hate Dan Sobel. Just I'm not gonna hate Donald Trump. Just like I hate Dan Sobel and Amanda Cartwright. Yeah, I didn't want to hate Trump just like I hate Dan Sobel. Because even though I have no opinion on Dan Sobel, even though I kind of do hate Dan Sobel, but I'm only just neutral to Donald Trump. I don't just like or hate Donald Trump. I'm only neutral. I'm not know if I'm a huge fan of Donald Trump. I don't mind Donald Trump in my opinion, but I do prefer if he likes to do some fun stuff. So yeah, especially I do like Dr. Phil. I don't like Dr. Phil has never been on PBS. It's on CBS. I'm afraid I hope PBS didn't shut down. I'm afraid the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, including PBS and PBS Kids. I hope PBS Kids didn't close down. I do know the last PBS Kids show recently I know was Carl the Collector. Oh yeah, I remember they did Amos Way. Was from Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Wild Kratts, Arthur, and all kinds of PBS Kids shows that were made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or any of the shows that used to air on PBS Kids, or any of the shows I remember from my childhood. Oh yeah, I know Fetchers Rough Rough Men. Oh, it's all from I remember PBS Kids Go used to be there, but they no longer had PBS Kids Go anymore. I remember the first PBS Kids Go was Maya Miguel and Postcard for Buster. I kind of do like PBS Kids Go. I think Fetchers Rough Rough Men was made by PBS Kids Go. I think PBS Kids Go were originally like older children instead of just like preschool. I guess like just for kids. I think Arthur would have been just for kids instead of just preschoolers. Because I can tell it doesn't always use. Because I think it'll be better watching Arthur. It's not childish for me anyways. Because in case it has to do with some. Like trying so hard not to do something inappropriately. Because I know Arthur had TV reference like some adult shows like Davis and Butthead or South Park and stuff like that. Including Teletubbies, which I do like. Some like, mostly like imaginary ways on Arthur. There are some people who hate Arthur, even though I do like Arthur with a loving passion. I do remember the first time I remember watching Arthur, it was from my childhood. Even though I do like Arthur so much. So yeah. Yeah, I'm afraid that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I know the very, very uncommon Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I know the Brothers Scribb did that. Because I remember, so yeah, I'm afraid the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is going to shut down for good. So yeah, I did upload some of my funding that has the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is the Brothers Grimm. It's very rare funding. So yeah, it's probably not on PBS. It wasn't very popular, but I know it's on kct.org, The Brothers Grimm by Tom Davenport. So yeah. So yeah. So yeah, I don't know what I don't. It's so hard. I really don't always. I don't really understand why the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but I know there's a reasons why. But I don't have a reasons why. Mostly I already know this has to do with Trump. We did explain. I do know realize that I do. It's a good thing SKY 1996 made a video about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. If you guys hate Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I can hear your opinion. You would have celebrated if you do hate the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. You will be very happy. I just don't like. I really hate when that happens. I mean, I like that's why they hate Dan Sobel so much. They gotta celebrate when he. Since I kind of do hate Dan Sobel, I only did that because a lot of YouTubers hate Dan Sobel because he did terrible things. But yeah, but this time I hope. Yeah, I'm afraid the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is gonna shut down. I think my favorite shows from PBS Kids when I was a child, I grew up was Sesame Street, Teletubbies, Booba. Well, Booba and Teletubbies were never made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I wish they did though, but I don't think Booba was originally ever been made by by the Corporation for was made by PBS because originally Booba and the Teletubbies were made in the United Kingdom because originally Booba came out on UK and Teletubbies were originally came out in the United Kingdom before the US. In the United States they did on PBS Kids. Because I know there are some. I do like PBS Kids so much because I do like Dot and Dash. I kind of do miss PBS Kids Dash and any of the stuff. Way before I was born, they were P-Pals, the PTV ones from 1993, through 1999 until they had replaced with Dot and Dash, until the first would. Oh yeah, Dragon Tales. They had the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They do that on those regular VHS tapes, like Between the Lines or or Dragon Tales VHS. For some reason they do have PBS fundings on VHS or maybe on DVD. Well, they didn't do fundings on Teletubbies and Booba. Well, except the screener tape of Booba, they did have the fundings, but very rare Booba screener tape. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think Caillou was made by a Corporation for Public Broadcasting. If you guys hate Caillou, I can handle your opinion. I don't think I ever hate any other PBS Kids shows. Some I'm neutral. I don't think Curious George was made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but I know Curious George was owned by Universal Studios. So I think usually the Corporation for Public Broadcasting originally, I think they probably made by the own PBS companies. I think. I know Arthur was originally the local channels. Arthur was made by WGBH, and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was made by WQED, which I do live in Pennsylvania. In case you were wondering, my local PBS station I watch is actually WITF. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm afraid the local channels will the PBS local channels will shut down. Well, guys, since even though the Corporation for Public Broadcasting will shut down, will they shut down all the PBS shows and all kinds of stuff? I don't know, you guys. I'm afraid, yeah, I'm afraid the PBS will shut down too, including PBS Kids. Or maybe it has to do with all the shows that were made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Not all PBS shows were made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting due to the funding. And Thomas and Friends and Bob the Builder or other hit entertainment shows, I don't think they ever did own by Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I think it has to do with because they were made by Hit Entertainment. Because I do like Hit Entertainment shows that are made by PBS. So yeah. But Thomas and Friends, Bob the Builder were not even on TBS anymore. Which I don't think Thomas and Friends wasn't even on TV on cable anymore. Even though they did have Thomas and Friends, Thomas stuff in Day Out with Thomas. Because I am starting getting a little into collecting Thomas DVDs. I don't think they ever did Thomas and Friends on PBS Kids Home Video. That would be very cool if they did, but my favorite PBS Home Video DVDs were Booba and the Teletubbies. Those are one of my favorite shows of all time from my childhood. So yeah. And I know usually on PBS Kids shows, they usually do the PBSKids.org bumpers, PBS fundings, and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Booba was never made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, even though Booba did have DVD release from... I remember when they did PBS Home Video Company, sometimes they do it on Warner Home Videos, or PBS Home Videos itself, and sometimes Paramount did that. I know PBS Kids was from Home Video sometimes, a long time made by Warner Home Video and Paramount. I remember all Teletubbies. I know all Booba DVDs were made by Paramount, and Teletubbies PBS Home Videos DVDs or VHS from Warner Home Video and Paramount. Booba VHS and DVDs were never been by Warner Home Video. I know some PBS Home Videos were made by Paramount, Warner Home Video, and PBS Home Video itself. Well, nowadays, recently on PBS Kids DVDs, they usually do them by itself. Well, I know Arthur VHS were never been made by PBS Home Video, only made by Random House and Sony Wonder. And I know Sesame Street were never been on PBS Kids Home Video except one VHS. There is only one Sesame Street VHS that was from PBS Home Video. They didn't have a lot of Sesame Street tapes that were from PBS. I know they made by Random House and Sony Wonder. And I know I do have a lot of Reading Rainbow VHS tapes, but I think the Reading Rainbows was made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I know Lamb Chop was made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So yeah. I'm afraid that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is going to shut down. I hope this video will be very popular because a lot of people know the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It's very popular. I hope this video will be very popular. I do have I know one of my popular videos I know mostly with Jack's Big Music Show. Oh, it's not made by Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I know Don Quixote was made by Spiffy Pictures. It's also like I think Don Quixote is kind of a rip-off Jack's Big Music Show. So yeah, and I'm afraid all kinds of shows that... Well, I know a lot of shows will no longer air, like Between the Lions. But I know the oldest PBS Kids show that I have that's still on TV on WITF. It's no longer Mr. Rogers. I couldn't be... for some reason on WITF, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is not even on anymore. It used to air on WITF, but not anymore. Because they don't have PBS Kids on the weekends anymore. Because I know Clifford was not on... I remember Clifford was owned by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Yeah, they had their own PBS stations. I think they own PBS Kids shows. But I know there are some PBS Kids shows that were originally not made by PBS kids like Teletubbies, Booba, or any other hit entertainment shows like Angelina Ballerina, Bob the Builder, Thomas and Friends, Barney and Friends. Well, actually, Barney was originally... Yeah, Barney was made by Corporation for Public Broadcasting a long time ago, but not anymore. But until later, but Barney did have a funding though, but a lot than Thomas and Bob the Builder. Thomas and Bob the Builder were never made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They were made by Hit Entertainment. And for some reason, Bob the Builder never had a funding, but he did have a little parts of funding on Thomas. Mostly they didn't do the funding. They only did like the Amtrak promos. So yeah. I think... Yeah, I do have a lot of interest in those PBS Kids shows from my childhood. I remember were Sesame Street. I really loved Sesame Street so much when I was a kid. I especially the Boobas and the Teletubbies. Yeah. Teletubbies were never made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It was originally made by Ragdoll. So yeah. I don't think Tots TV was made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Because it was made by Ragdoll as well in the United Kingdom. I think my favorite... So yeah. Yeah, for some reason I was talking something else besides the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And I don't think Kai was made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. But I remember Barney used to own by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting before it took off the air, but not anymore. But yeah. All the PBS Kids shows that were on, and they used to be on PBS, but I know it's still on TV. The oldest PBS Kids show that's still on TV for a very long time on WITF TV Harrisburg were actually still on TV was mostly Arthur. Because I know Arthur, the shows I already know was on. I don't think Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood was owned by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I know Odd Squad was on. Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood was on TV. Arthur's still on TV recently. Amish Way, Peekalicious and Peterific. Rosie's Rules. A Don Quixote was on. Sesame Street was still on PBS Kids. I could still watch. All some of the shows I can't remember. I know Nature Cat. It used to have Nature Cat was on WITF, but not anymore. And it used to have Hero Elementary, but not anymore. It used to have Curious George on WITF since on PBS Kids, but not anymore. Actually, Curious George already took off the air. Word World would never been made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, not even Curious George. But shows I remember took off the air that was made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I know, were Between Alliance or Dragon Tales, I believe. Well, I know Sesame Street did own by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, because I think Sesame Street was originally from NET. Well, originally, before they had PBS, it was NET. I think originally they made up PBS. I think it has to do with Mr. Rogers. So yeah. I think Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was the first and oldest and only PBS Kids show that I know that was on PBS Kids. Sadly, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is no longer on WITF. It's not even on. Speaking of, Miss Fred Rogers passed away. Yeah. I'm afraid the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is going to be gone was going to shut down on January. It has to do with Trump. There has to be a reason. Not because there's no reason. I'm afraid I have to say this, but I'm afraid it's going to close down for no reason at all. I'm pretending there is no reason why. Just want how I feel for other YouTubers hates me for me liking Dan Sobel. And Clay and Amanda Cartwright. I'm not like I should not like CoComelon. Oh, CoComelon will never be on PBS. I remember Thomas and Friends is no longer air on PBS. So is Bob the Builder. I remember I grew up watching that show. I haven't. So yeah. Oh, Bob the Builder was never had a funding before. It never did, even though it did air on PBS Kids. First, Bob the Builder took off the air on Nick Jr. and then replaced with PBS Kids in 2005. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Instead of just taking off the air on Nick, even though Bob the Builder originally came out on Nick Jr. and then replaced by Nick PBS Kids, I think I do. I remember watching Bob the Builder was on PBS Kids. So yeah. And I do have some of my old PBS blank tapes from the 2000s, but mostly it was Thomas and Friends and Bob the Builder. And they're not made by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So yeah. But I know Clifford was made by Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but it no longer aired. Clifford the Big Red Dog is the 2000 series is no longer aired anymore, which kind of sucks. I remember watching Clifford from my childhood. I don't mind. I don't really and stuff. I'm not really into that stuff. I remember part of my child grew up watching that show. I don't really do, even though I do love PBS Kids shows. So yeah. So that means I'm afraid that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is going to shut down for good. So yeah, it's so hard to explain why the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is going to shut down. So yeah, I think it has to do with Trump for decided to shut down the governments, and I'm fine. I don't really care if he has rights, for my opinion. I don't know what my thoughts are. I really have a bad feeling it's going to be gone. So you're probably going to be hated because of a lot of people were. I'm afraid it's getting a lot of trouble because who wants. So yeah. So yeah. I just really hate this. I'm afraid they're going to be closed down for good. I hope they're not going to close down PBS because of the corporation. What? PBS is going to close down? PBS Kids and PBS will be shut down, including all my local stations, because the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was shut down? Oh, I'm afraid that will happen. It just feels like it kind of reminds me back in. Like it never did close down anymore, but it turns out it was a lie, which that's actually fake. I remember back in 2023 that all my inactive accounts will be deleted. And speaking of Hello Kitty Fan 157's YouTube channel will not be upload videos anymore. That feels like then it turns out the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is going to shut down. I'm afraid all the PBS Kids shows will be shut down. Will be gone. I'm afraid the copyright might expire, because we already know Arthur was. Because I'm afraid the copyrights might expire. I don't mind. Actually, I would love to if copyrights will expire, because PBS Kids shows. I think it might if they were expired, and they didn't want any more. I hope they're not going to delete all those shows because of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I hope the shows will be kept forever, just like Booba has been gone for good. Well, mostly that's gone for good on Booba, or actually the US versions of Booba. So yeah, so I'm afraid in case it's going to be gone for good, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Let's take a moment of silence for 10 seconds. Okay, I think that was 10 seconds, so yeah. So I'm afraid it'll be rest in peace for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. You probably won't see the Corporation for Public Broadcasting ever again. It's kind of feel like when people have passed away, for example. Just like they they were gone like PBS Kids Brown Q-Boat did, including Universal Kids. So yeah, I think that's all I gotta say for this video. So that's all I gotta say for this video. Thanks for watching. Peace out, everyone. Ta-ta for now.